So I've got a number of things to talk about today. Our approach to consumer education. First, why do we do it? Second, who do we do it for? Third, what do we educate about? And fourth, how we do it. I'm going to talk about all of those, and then I've got for you 3 different videos, short videos, that and we do many of these in different formats and all, but that just talk about three different basic issues to all of you, but perhaps to the layman that doesn't know a lot about investing and needs to come up the curve. So perhaps many of your members who are not financial experts. These are type of things that we utilize to engage the public in retirement or individuals in retirement plans and elsewhere. And then I'm going to show you and talk a little bit about something that we did innovatively that we've been working on for the past, I guess we worked on it for 3 years before the introduction. And in May of 2009, we launched the Great Piggyback Adventure, which is it's both an online board game on the web, which all of you can go to and play. And we have it at Disney World at Epcot Center. And it's an innovative way for families to be able to discuss with their children and play in a game that focuses on some basic principles of investing and saving and establishing a goal. And I put these 4 first slides up here in a puzzle format because to many, investing is a puzzle. And getting the pieces going together properly it makes a lot of sense. When I was 16, I got my pilot's license, and I remember very vividly my father telling me, who was a very experienced pilot, he said, "Son, in flying, you start with a bag full of luck and an empty bag of experience. And the trick is to fill the bag full of experience before you empty the bag of luck." And I think that is so true with a lot in investing. Actually, mentioning luck, it just hit me. Another great line from my dad on the issue of luck. He said, I asked him, do you believe in luck? And he says, "Of course I do. How else can you explain the successes of those who you despise?" So, I mean, people have a right to choose to become wise and responsible in investing, as in other things. But the inescapable corollary is they have the right not to choose to do that without hope of escaping from the consequences. And we as a firm believe that it is important to seek to arouse in people the desire to become responsible. And a lot of that comes with education. So why do we do it? First, well, we do it because it's a social good. We believe it's important to help people achieve their financial goals. It's a very important component of our corporate philosophy, our corporate citizenship philosophy. And improving financial understanding improves society as a whole. You know, in simple terms, people are going to have money for sending their kids to school or retirement. And from a macro viewpoint, state funding in America, Social Security, is not going to do it. So we need to help individuals make sense out of the ambiguity and the noise out there. In time, if the investor doesn't succeed, we all lose. So that's the key social aspect of what we do. Now, early in this conversation, I wanted to talk about sex. So this is some research we did just last year, and we found that 59% of Americans find it harder to talk to their kids about money than they do about sex. And that's just mind-blowing to me because I know talking to children about sex is extraordinarily difficult. So that's a scary thought. Second, 34% of parents have a low self-esteem in understanding basic financial education. And I think a lot of that 34%, that there are various degrees of self-esteem, and I think most of it is on the very low end. Let me skip that. So a fact here in America, more Americans own credit products than investment products. You can see here that 68% have a credit card, 61% own a home with a mortgage, 51% have a retirement plan with an employer. You'd think that it would be higher than that. And only 46% have an account outside of that retirement plan. and only 28% have a saving, or 28% have no savings account whatsoever. State-funded consumer education has to cover a lot of different products. And since most of them are banking or insurance-oriented, you're going to get the rich lobbying groups for those organizations that infiltrate it. So the asset management focus is not there from a state standpoint. So I think it's imperative to those of us in the industry, as those of also those in the industry as a provider of asset management services, and you, superannuation, working with your members, to spend a lot of time on education. Second reason why we do it, it's good business. I grew up in New Jersey, just outside of New York, and there was a men's clothing store, and I always remember the TV commercials and the advertisements. Cy Sims was the name of the store. And the tagline had nothing to do with clothing. It just said, an educated consumer is our best customer. And I think there's a lot to be said about that, no matter what industry you're in. But better informed consumers make better decisions. And if that's the case, and we're doing a pretty good job helping them along, hopefully they will remain with us. Our approach is a lot of stewardship in here. Understand what will help individuals achieve their goals, and I'll talk about all this. Build tools and services and processes to further that achievement. Create a continuum to match solutions to individuals' preferences and needs throughout their life. Educate people about their needs and how the solutions will help them, and get them to understand what to do and help them do it. There's a lot on that page there, but it takes a lot of work. But I think if you do it properly, at the end of the day, you've got a satisfied individual who feels more confident about managing money. And confidence is the umbilical cord of the financial industry and for their finances. Now, the opposite approach, is to build something that sells today to raise short-term assets, regardless of whether or not it makes sense for the end customer. Short-term profit pushing is going to pale in comparison to the long-term benefit of an investor base that knows that you've looked out for them. It's not enough for our industry, and when I say our industry, I mean those of us in the asset management industry and also you on the super side. It's not enough to try and create value for clients. You have to create value that meets the client's need first, that looks out for the client first. The client should be the focus and the center of the universe. And business that involves people's life savings, involves and rotates around trust and confidence, and you've got to do everything you can to try and improve that confidence. And things that the industry might do that are focused more on themselves and less on the customer is bad for the industry and bad for the customer. It reminds me of that joke of the retail investor having a conversation with God, and the retail investor says, God, when will the investment management industry collectively and consistently put clients' interests first? And God responds, not in my generation. So I think what matters is the long-term positive investor experience, so that you can retain those investors, and importantly, so that you can ensure that you help them or protect them from doing things of damage to themselves. So financial education must be tied to a specific outcome. Education without an outcome attached to it is void. So we start first with education. What information is relevant for a specific audience? So let's say you're talking to a 20-year-old and talking about why they should save for retirement. That conversation and the information imparted there is going to be very different than talking to a 60-year-old who hasn't saved a lot of money. Two different levels of conversation and information to impart. Next, you want to use that education to provide knowledge. Do they get what it is that you've talked with them about? Does the 20-year-old now understand that their retirement savings are important and what they need to do to make it happen? Does the 60-year-old know that he or she needs to work longer and delay taking money out of Social Security for a further period of time? Then what skills are really needed to impact that decision making? So using that same analogy, does the 20-year-old conceptualize the trade-off between consumption today and savings later? And does the 60-year-old understand why and the things they need to do in order to improve their situation? You know, talking to them about why they should have saved money a long time ago is moot, or talking to or educating the 20-year-old about why they should take Social Security at a particular point in time. Those are useless. You've got to focus on the education that makes the most sense. So education, increase their knowledge, help develop the skills and capabilities, and that is to change their behaviors. Part of our business is in the behavior modification business, and I'll talk to that in a minute. You want to make sure that their behaviors are conducive to ensuring that they get to their goal. And all of this is to get at the outcome. And the outcome and the goal is to have confidence to achieve their goals. Without starting with a goal and working back from that, education in and of itself is not all that useful. So a couple comments on behaviors. You know, I think we all know, the retail investor, sadly, is a trend follower. And in a mean reverting world, they're set up for disillusionment, disappointment, and outright failure. And so you have to protect them from themselves. And I think our industry, in general, globally, has done a very poor job because there's a tendency to hype product just at the wrong time. I mean, most of the ads I remember back on TV and all that were back in 1998, 1999 in the United States in the asset management industry were about getting more money into technology funds. And then the market crashed, and then it was putting your money into safety. It was the flip side. And we saw the same issue come about in the latest crisis that we had in the financial crisis. So I guess what happens there is there's a lot of triumph of impulse over reason, and you need to create educational materials that impart that knowledge. We utilize an equation, if you will, at T. Rowe. S is equal to R minus E. Satisfaction is equal to reality minus expectations. And where reality is the vicissitudes of the market over which you have no control, you've got to be really, really good in managing those expectations in order to have a satisfied client. And I think a lot of in the industry is there's too much hype out there. Okay, so next, who do we do it for? We do it for retail consumers. We do it for employees in defined contribution plans, 401k plans, a lot of financial intermediaries around the globe that we work with, and importantly, the community. We work with youth groups, we work with schools, we work with universities, we work with clubs, we work with nonprofit organizations, and the more we can get that out into the community, it's better for the community, it's better for them, and hopefully better for us. So now we go into the voting. Okay, so we're up there. What type of an investor are you? Do you prefer making investment decisions on your own? Do you prefer making investment decisions after getting input or validation from someone else? Or third, do you prefer a packaged investment solution, relying on someone else? Interesting. A lot of validators out there. Very interesting that there's very similar between the package solution and the investment decisions. I'll show you some data from the United States that differs from this a bit. So behavioral finance, three primary types of investors and their engagement levels. First, we have the soloist, the do-it-yourself individual who prefers to do everything on their own. They feel very confident. But I think also an issue that we have here is that a lot of confident people also can tend to make mistakes. You know, it's not necessarily what you don't know that kills you. It's what you know that turns out not to be true that can hurt. And we've found that over time, many soloists gravitate to the right here. Second is the validators. You know, gosh, I think this is a 6-iron to the green. What do you think? And you're asking somebody else to validate your decision. I think I want to buy that Fidelity fund. What do you think? And that's about 15% of the population in the United States. Only 10% are soloists. And finally, the delegator, who prefers packaged solutions and a default type solution. That's 75% of the population. So perhaps it's the skewing of the people that are in this room, but that's the general preference or structure in the United States. So going on so on the left, self-directed, on the right are advice-seeking. So moving on to how we do it, we design segmented communications and education tools and services to deal with all three of those and meet them where they are, not try a one-size-fits-all approach. So for the soloist, they want in-depth tools. They want to be communicated to on a personal level. They want lots of data. They want to have lots of inputs to get lots of outputs. They're willing to work hard. The validator, they want stuff that's a little more simple. They want quick answers. They don't want a lot of inputs to fill out. They don't want to do a lot of work. It's several steps down from there. And lastly, the delegator, they just want something quick and simple. So we've designed many different pieces of communication and education across the spectrum. So just for example, in terms of the simple issue of designing what's an appropriate amount of savings you should have for retirement. That's a big issue. Well, the soloist, we've got a number of things, retirement calculators and things that use lots of Monte Carlo simulations, very sophisticated things. They've got to work and input a lot of information, and then they get output that they can massage. Whereas on the right, the delegator, we can do something where they put in two things, what's their age and what's their salary, and we have a simple calculation that gets a multiplier, and they can take it from there. So two different ways of getting at an answer. Certainly the first one is far more robust, but the second approach helps the individual move along at their engagement level. And another principle here is you don't want to ask a lot of questions that people don't know the answers to. Give them stuff that they can properly figure out on their own. So here's just an evolution of what we did. Back in the 1980s, it was a lot of do-it-yourself kits and software, retirement planning software and paper-based retirement planning kits. Then in the 1990s, we moved to a lot more advice and solutions for individuals. And added a lot of advisory services. But a lot of this back in 1980s and 90s, a lot of it was focused more on that soloist or that validator. It wasn't until the 2000s that we came out with a lot more information that helped them with asset allocation assistance, gave them a checkup on their retirement calculations, helped them evaluate themselves on a number of different areas. And that's when we introduced also our retirement date funds. Let me make a comment on that, just a sidebar. I know there was some discussion. I don't know if many of you were in the discussion, the session yesterday about life cycle funds. I just used T. Rowe Price's data. So we have both life cycle funds, target date funds, or lifestyle funds, which are risk-based funds. And in 2002 is when, and we're one of the largest providers of target date funds in the United States. In 2002, we had no money in retirement date funds, and we had about $1.8 billion in retirement, risk-based funds, lifestyle funds. By 2010, that $1.8 billion, at the end of December 2010, in that risk-based, that was about $3.5 billion. We went from zero in 2002 in target date funds, and at the end of 2010, we're at approximately $60 billion. It's clear that that's where the marketplace is going, is having a number of products customized to the particular asset allocation need of people as they move through their life. And then lastly here, in 2010, we're doing a lot more mobile application. We want to get information to people the way they want to get it in mobile applications. How we do it, the delivery, I think, across the board, phone, print, digital, in person. You can see the last words there. What we're trying to do is instill confidence. As I mentioned before, confidence is huge, and the more confident one feels about something, typically the better job they do with it. So how we do it, delivery. On the left, this is just a couple examples here. On the left, this is for the soloist, the do-it-yourselfer. They can enter a lot of different things and get a lot of different outputs. Whereas on the right-hand side, this is something very simple. They have to put in 2 items to get an answer and use a simple equation box. We've got multiple things like this, just throwing you one example. Here's another one in terms of publications and newsletters. The one on the left, the T. Rowe Price report. This is forcing the reader to engage with data. This particular thing has 8 different types of asset classes that are analyzed, and there's some work that they have to do. Whereas on the right-hand side, it's an investor magazine, big, bold print, simple, big, large numbers, graphically enticing. It provides very straightforward information. And we're sending this to individuals as we see what their needs are. This is some stuff that we do for intermediaries, planners or banks or insurance companies that we're working with, for them to work with their customers. Intermediary here would also be a superannuation where we are working with someone at the end. The one on the left is just a more intense analysis, and the one on the right a bit more simple with graphs and pictures. Another how we do it, delivery, as I mentioned before, we do a lot in the community. We work with the Boys and Girls Clubs of America. I'll talk about the Great Piggy Bank Adventure, and you can see the one on the right there, and this is just some examples. Maybe Baby, this is just financial planning for people, for parents, just as they're having a child. But the more we can do for the general population, hopefully that, as I mentioned earlier, it improves society, but it also will get a benefit out of it. Now, what we educate about, setting and prioritizing goals, that's critical. You've got to have a goal to get and you work toward that goal, whether that's sending the kids to college or buying a car or retirement. Saving and spending wisely. Saving isn't bad, but saving wisely is good. It's like flying isn't bad. Flying isn't dangerous. It's crashing that's dangerous. And then lastly, the whole issue of investing. And we want to focus on what's right for the customer along their stage that helps them get to their goal. So with that as a backdrop, I want to now take you through to some videos, which will probably be more enjoyable than listening to me talk, that just goes through some of this. We do different videos across multiple different aspects of investing, but this is just a couple examples. So the first one here is going to be the stock market, long-term versus short-term. Second will be sticking with your plan. We use little kids playing soccer or football, excuse me, to help that. Diversifying, we use this, that's the tropical island, we show that. And then lastly, I'll show you about the Disney collaboration. So let's go to the first one, short versus long term.
One of the fundamentals of retirement investing is taking a long-term view, because a single year is not an appropriate time frame to evaluate long-term investing in the stock market. To see why, let's look at how the good times and the not-so-good times roll. Investing in the stock market isn't gambling, but we can learn something powerful from rolling dice. It can help us put extremes like 2008 into context. Let's look at what happens when we roll a pair of dice and track the results on a graph. The lowest possible result we can get is 2. The highest result we can get is 12. The middle number is a 7, and we fill in the rest. Let's roll the dice and see what we get. 3 and 2, that's 5. Mark that on the graph. Roll again. 6 and 2, that's 8. Now watch what happens as we roll a bunch of times. Most of the results are grouped in the middle and less in the extremes. If we continue to roll over and over, eventually we'd see this. Even more results grouped in the middle and fewer extremes. This shows the chances of getting each possible outcome on a single roll. For example, there's only a 3% chance of rolling a 2. Now let's see what happens when we roll the dice 2 times and take the average. We roll the dice once, we get 9. Roll it again, we get a 3. Add them together and divide by 2, 6. We put that on the graph. If we keep rolling forever and take the average of each 2 rolls, here's what we'd eventually see. This shows the chances of getting each outcome of the average of 2 rolls. Again, more of the results are grouped in the middle, but now there are even fewer extremes than the previous. Why is that? Well, the only way to get an average of 2 is to roll a 2 twice. So now there's just a 1% likelihood of the average of 2 rolls being 2. What if we were to roll the dice 5 times? Here's the picture showing the chances of each outcome of the average of 5 rolls. For the average to be a 2, we'd have to roll a 2, then another 2, then another 2, then another 2, then another 2. Could it happen? Yes. Is it likely? No. The chance of 5 rolls averaging a 2 becomes less than 1%. So you see a very different picture when you look at the result of 1 roll compared to the average of many rolls. Here's how this applies to the history of the stock market. We'll do the same thing we did with dice to the S&P 500, one of the most commonly used benchmarks for the US stock market. We'll take the 1-year return of the S&P 500 for every year from 1926 to 2009 and put them on a graph. 1 year the S&P returned 10%, another year it lost 15%, then another year it was up 20%. When we do that, here's the picture that emerges. There was a year when the stock market lost more than 40%. There was also a year when the stock market gained more than 50%. Now let's take the average results over 5 years, just like we did with the dice. We take the 5-year period of 1926, 27, 28, 29, and 30, average of the returns, and mark it on the chart. Then we take the average of 1927 through 1931 and put that on the chart, and so on until the end of 2009. Here's what we see. Historically, the extremes start to disappear, just like they did in the dice graph. Now let's look at 15 years in a row, 1926 to 1940. Take the average and put that on the chart. Then 1927 through 1941 and so on. Here's what that picture looks like. And here's what's amazing. When we look at the average annual return for each 15-year period of the S&P 500 from 1926 through 2009, every single one of them is positive. That's a powerful realization. Let's return to 2008. Did we see an extreme in 2008? We sure did. You could say we rolled a 2. Did we see another extreme in 2009 when the market was up 26%? Yes, we did. While always dramatic, 1-year extremes aren't new and don't constitute some kind of change. And as we've just seen, you get a more appropriate perspective of investing in the stock market if you look at longer time frames, such as 15-year periods. That's one of the fundamentals of retirement investing, and that hasn't changed as a result of the recent market downturn. I'm Stuart Ritter, Certified Financial Planner with T. Rowe Price.
So that and the other ones, we make these available to clients. We worked with our 401k plan clients. We've got this on a public website. It's used in classrooms and universities with clubs. And the response that we get from a lot of people is it's easier for people to kind of get it when they have something that's a bit more enjoyable to watch, or to engage them. So here's another one. This is about sticking with your investing plan.
The way the stock market often performs with its ups and downs, it's easy to feel that we're missing out on some hot trend, or that the latest crisis means we should run away from something. After all, we're told to stay the course, stick to the plan, or buy and hold. I want to examine this concept, but first, let's look at the way little kids play soccer. Here's what little kids do. They run out onto the field and take their positions. This is where coach and mom and dad told them to be, and they have every intention of staying in that position. But what happens? The whistle blows, the ball moves, and the yelling starts. Run for the ball. It's over here. The ball's over there. Go, run, go. So what do the kids do? They run to the ball. After all, that's what everyone's yelling about. Now there's one kid over here who knows he's supposed to stay in his spot, but he's not having any fun. Everybody's yelling about where the ball is, and everyone else is running after it. He's missing out. He tries as long as he can, but eventually he can't stand it anymore, and he too runs after the ball. As soon as he does, where does the ball go? Right where he should have been. By the time he turns around and runs back to his position, where's the ball? Anywhere but there. Those silly little kids. Now let's talk about the way many adults invest. We go out there and we take our positions. We know we're supposed to have an appropriately allocated portfolio, diversified into different kinds of stocks and different kinds of bonds, and shift the allocation as our time horizon changes. We have every intention of doing so. Maybe we start out that way, but then what happens? The whistle blows, the ball moves, and the yelling starts. The top 25 funds, the best stocks to own now. The dollar is falling, interest rates are climbing. Move, move, move! We're bombarded with all of these messages to do something. So what do many adults eventually do? They run to the ball. That's what everyone's talking about. You're here on high-yield bonds. But the crowd is yelling. No one holds those now. What are you thinking? Some people will abandon their appropriately allocated, properly diversified portfolio and run after the ball. And when they do, where does it go? Right where they just were. But by the time they run back, where's the action now? Anywhere but there. The truth is, nobody really knows where the ball is going next. So the only way to make sure that you're playing it properly is to hold your positions. Put together a plan that's appropriate for your goal. Choose a portfolio based on that plan and stick to it. That's called buy and hold. And that's something that doesn't change when the market does. I'm Stuart Ritter, Certified Financial Planner with T. Rowe Price.
I mentioned earlier the triumph of impulse over reason, and I think that that permeates a lot of life for all of us as human beings. It's natural. So sticking with a plan is difficult to do in the face of all the bombardment of information that we get. I will say, is one reason for the benefit of target date funds, the experience that we've had, and also automatic enrollment into target date funds, because it helps, that inertia helps people protect themselves from doing something foolish. During the fourth quarter of 2008 and the first quarter of 2009, of all of our clients in that $60 billion well, 60 now is a little bit less than, of target date funds, only less than 3% of them actually moved their money out of the target date fund in the face of that draconian financial crisis that we had. And those that did moved themselves into more conservative products, and they ended up missing the upside. And where those folks in those retirement date products today are that stayed there, they missed all the ups and downs, and they've turned out to be okay. Skepticism and pessimism are not synonymous, but pessimism or skepticism is necessary when pessimism is in abundance, and likewise. Skepticism is necessary when optimism is in abundance, and sticking with a plan is critical for all of us. So let's look at one last one, and this is about diversification.
At any given time, there's always some part of the market or an individual stock that's touted as a great investment. Why not put all of your money in that sector? If it hits, you'd make a mint. Remember that the goal of investing is not to make a mint, although that would be nice. The goal of investing is to be able to have enough money to buy something you've decided is important to you. An important part of reaching that goal is diversification. Now, diversification cannot assure a profit or protect against loss in a declining market. But what diversification is designed to do is to assure you don't have all your money in one area of the market that does worse than average. To learn more about diversification, we'll take an imaginary trip to a tropical island. On this island, no one can predict what the weather will be like tomorrow. Sometimes it's sunny, sometimes it's rainy. There's a very good lemonade stand business there, and you decide to invest in it. On sunny days, everyone enjoys lemonade, and your investment gives you a 20% return. That's great. But when it rains, business dampens, and you get zero. It goes on and on like this. Sunny 20% return, rainy 0. Off and on, up and down. So over time, your average return is 10%. That's okay. Now another business catches your eye. It sells umbrellas. You think, as often as it rains around here, maybe I should invest in that business instead. Well, what if you did? On sunny days, no one buys umbrellas and your investment earns nothing. But when it rains, umbrellas sell like lemonade on a sunny day, and your investment earns 20%. So which is the best investment? If you invest all your money in the lemonade stand, and then it rains for a really long time, your low return could prevent you from having enough money to buy what you want, when you want. Same is true if you invest all your money in the umbrella stand and hit an extended sunny patch. Sure, if the weather turns out to favor the investment you chose, you could do really well. You'd probably end up with more than enough money. But you do so at the risk of missing your goal. Suddenly it occurs to you, what if you invest in both? If you invest half your money in the lemonade stand and half in the umbrella stand, it doesn't matter what the weather actually ends up being. You won't have all your money in something that underperforms. Let's connect this to something in the real world. Imagine there's only two kinds of companies to invest in: oil companies and airlines. And if the price of oil goes up, oil companies can make a lot of money. But airlines, which have fuel as one of their biggest expenses, might make less money. The opposite is true if oil prices go down. Oil companies wouldn't perform well, and airlines would do well. So, should you invest in oil or airlines? Remember what happens if you invest all of your money in just one sector and get it wrong. But if you put half your money in oil companies and half in airlines, then you don't need to worry as much about the price of oil. Obviously, the market is much more complicated than just two sectors. And that just reinforces the point. Having your money spread among many sectors and many stocks reduces the chance that you will have all your money invested in something that performs worse than average. For example, if you invested in the top 5 best performing stocks of 2007, instead of diversifying into the 500 stocks of the S&P 500, here's what would have happened in 2008. The S&P 500 lost 37% that year. But the non-diversified portfolio of those 5 best stocks lost 61%. What's worse than losing 37%? Losing more than 37%. And the way you avoided that was by spreading your money around. That's called diversification. And that's something that hasn't changed as a result of the downturn. I'm Stuart Ritter, Certified Financial Planner with T. Rowe Price.
Okay, obviously we're in a conference room, so it's a lot easier for me to show you those videos than a lot of the other tools that we have. But that's just some example of, obviously, these are not intended for the sophisticated audience. But if 75% of the population is not in that soloist area, they're delegators or they're validators and they just want to learn a little bit more, these things go over quite well. So let me lastly take you into our collaboration with Disney. We worked with Disney, as I mentioned, for 3 years to introduce this initiative, which came out in May of 2009. We created an online game, and I'll give you the website for it. And then we have an interactive game at Walt Disney World's Epcot Center. The objective is to engage parents and children in an ongoing and meaningful discussion about how to handle money responsibly. We're trying to teach them a few key things. The target is kids 8 to 14 years of age. And it's very interesting to watch parents and child get together in this. I mean, sometimes the kids have more savvy about it than the parents do, but it creates a dialogue. And I think, as all of us will attest, or most of us will attest, that when it comes to anything, the experiences you had earlier in life have a profound impact. So when it comes to financial issues, awareness and decision-making are impacted by your early experience. And our goal here is to get kids to do a lot more, learn a lot more about saving and investing. Now, I put this slide up earlier. Setting and prioritizing a goal is very important. If you don't have the goal, investing you don't know what you're working for. You need to save and spend wisely so that you're moving yourself toward that goal appropriately, and then you've got to invest in an appropriate manner. So these 3 things, setting and prioritizing goals, saving and spending wisely, and investing, are key things in the game. First, you choose a goal. Now, for parents, the goal might be sending your kids through college. The goals for the kids in these games are, buying a scooter, or buying a basketball hoop. Simple things. Saving and spending wisely. If your goal is to buy a basketball hoop, then it doesn't make a lot of sense spending money on a whoopee cushion. You want to spend money on something that'll move you toward that, and that's taught through here. Inflation, understanding the impact of inflation on your money over time. We have a wolf, who's an inflation wolf, who kind of takes stuff away from the kid. And diversifying. there are 3 piggy banks that you get. There's Mellow Yellow, which is all in short-term investments. There's True Blue, which is invested in bonds, and there's Red Hot, which is 100% invested in stocks. And kids get an allowance, and then they got to pick a goal that they want to go for, and then they can start investing that money. And they'll learn pretty frequently as they go through the game that, you know, investing all in that Red Hot doesn't make so much sense because money can be taken away from you. And you go through the game progressing toward reaching your goal. The kids can play it by themselves. They can play it with their family. In the online board game, you can play it with several people, your friends or your family members. And watching all this, I mean, hundreds of thousands of kids have gone here at Disney World and all. And the output and the excitement around it is quite interesting. And the amount of people that have gone to the online game and continue to play is quite rewarding. There's nothing in here at all that promotes T. Rowe Price. Our name is on there with Disney, as you'll see, and that's it. No promotional materials, nothing. It's truly eleemosynary, if you will. So let's go into that. We don't have any...
Walt Disney World Resort is opening an attraction next week called the Great Piggy Bank Adventure, which will teach families about personal finance.
This is kind of interesting. There's a new exhibit at Epcot Center that teaches children important financial lessons.
A new attraction at Disney teaches kids you're never too young to learn about money.
A Baltimore business and Disney World have teamed up, and they're helping your kids save money. Disney and T. Rowe Price have created the Great Piggy Bank Adventure.
Disney has a new game that teaches little ones about finance. GreatPiggyBankAdventure.com.
If we can impart on young folks here the issue of saving versus spending, the issue of diversification, and the issue of trying to understand risk and return in that relationship. If they come away with a very basic familiarity with some of that via the game process here, I mean, to us, that's a big win.
At the beginning of the Great Piggy Bank Adventure, where everybody receives a pig or a personal investment guide, right now he's kind of empty. But as you go through all of the games, hopefully at the end, that will change.
I think it's clearly important to get those basic lessons, and what we found that's most important as we watch the testing of this program early on is it's opening up a dialogue between parents and their kids.
Okay, let me just, I don't have the technology down here to walk you through and play the game, but my friends in the booth are going to go through this. So,
our story begins, as many do, in a small town. This one's called Fiscalville. Here every girl and boy, like you, has a dream. Some small, some live only in the imagination, but all can be reached by smart planning and a little luck. On the way are wilderness adventures, unexplored treasures, explosive surprises, and a wolf who wants nothing more than to spoil your plans. If everything goes your way, you'll travel to the big city in style. Good things happen fast, but only if you rise to the challenge. Welcome to the Great Piggy Bank Adventure, where if you play your cards right, you just might end up living the dream of your lifetime. Our story begins, as many do.
Oops. All right. Well, that's all I have. I just want to profusely thank you, Colin, for asking me to come here. I've really enjoyed myself here. I hope this information was of some use to all of you, and thank you again for the tremendous hospitality that you afforded myself and others of us from the United States that came over here. Thanks.